The very first limited Cryo 5-star was the very first waifu that Teyvat has ever seen in their event banners. She was considered broken. She was considered thick. She was protect. She was suck. She was waifu. However, I skipped without a moment's heartbeat. And to this day, the trend of 5-star Cryo is equal to Thought Mommy has never been made more apparent. And I have none of them. With Ayaka's banner here and another impending skip of another Cryo waifu coming, allow me to tell you why I've never pulled a 5-star Cryo unit, and that's not going to change anytime soon. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, YouTube. It's your Slime King, the Jima Man, and welcome to another video.
This moment will be frozen in time.
Look, I'm well aware of just how broken freeze teams are, and just how broken some of these Cryo characters are. Freeze is one of the best reactions in the game. It's been increasingly prevalent in recent abysses, almost to the point of being needed, because of the Hydro Heralds, and just in general, enemies that tend to move around a lot. However, despite their overwhelming number of upsides, I managed to never have the desire of pulling any of them. Before I explain myself, some of the things I will be saying in this video is purely subjective, and thus, no need to get all your panties gussied up in a bunch, alright? Let's start by the order of their releases, which brings us to the character I referenced at the start of this video, why I didn't pull for Ganyu. I have a lot of things to say about Ganyu. She was once revered as the best DPS in the entire game, top of the meta tier list all around. However, today I believe that claim is false in every single way. She has two really good teams, Melt and Freeze. Her Freeze teams are pretty bad in single target, relatively compared to the other options you have, but really good in AoE because of her synergy with Venti. Melt requires an acquired taste in playstyle, not to mention you need Kazuha, Zhongli, and Bennett in that team to perform to its peak potential. These teams are good, but they do not interest me at all. Morgana, while fun to play, means that I need to use Mona, and I hate using Mona, and I hate using Diona. Sure, there are alternatives to them such as Kokomi and Rosaria, but this is where my true bias comes in. I just think Ganyu is boring, not only to play, but also her characterization in her own story quest. In her story quest, I almost fell asleep like her in her own idle animation, and I just lost all motivation to frickin' pull her. One last thing about Ganyu, she is not the all-encompassing problem solver she was thought to be once upon a time. There was still this notion that Ganyu is this one unit that can carry you to an easy 36 star in Abyss. You can see all these solo runs and think she'd be broken if you add more members to the team, but that is the exact opposite of what really happens. Ganyu is kind of like Xiao in that sense. She is a hyper carry that brings a lot to the table, however her synergies aside from Venti aren't that good. Yes, she has access to freeze, but you also have to remember that she needs to charge attack every single time, which takes up a lot of time. And you need her to be really invested with Mona's buff, TTDS and VV buffing her up so that she can carry a team by herself. The reason why she is good in Morgana is because of her synergy with Venti and abusing her quadratic scaling. Without that, Ganyu falls off to being a mid-tier carry, and her teams aside from Melt are merely so-so. If you want to see real synergy, just look at her competition in Ayaka. A fresh Ayaka coming into an AR-45 account can be ran with Kaya, Barbara, and Anemo MC. That team can clear the Abyss, granted, you have enough investment in Ayaka. The same cannot be said for Ganyu. Ganyu with those units will absolutely be a pain to play with. To sum up all my thoughts on this Coco Goat, Ganyu's playstyle just doesn't vibe with me. I just find her character boring, and lastly, her true synergies with other units are limited. If you think this video is just dumping all over every other Cryo character based on my thoughts on Ganyu, then you would be wrong. Because next up is Eula, and I actually like her. In terms of personality and design, she is an A+ in my book. I mean, of course, have you seen her? And the fact that her VA is the same as Biribiri is also another drop in the plus bucket. Eula, in my opinion, probably has one of the best character designs in the game, and I can see why people are obsessed with her. Her kit is so cohesive and so well thought out. Grim Heart increases her defense and interrupt resist, and then applies Fizz Res when consumed. This perfectly synergizes with how she likes to do a normal attack combo during her burst, but I didn't pull for her. And this is much more simple than Ganyu's case. It's because I simply don't like how frustrating she is to play at times. I don't like that when I cast my burst, I am literally incapable of any other choice than to attack in order to maximize my damage. I am well aware that every other infusion-based skill or burst is also this way, but the thing is, those skills and bursts don't punish you as hard as Eula's burst does. You don't do enough normal attacks to maximize their damage and one-shot the enemies? Too bad, reset. You don't crit? Too bad, reset. It's these inconveniences that despite me liking Eula's character, I just can't bring myself to pull her. As much as I am a waifu husbando player, I need their kit to vibe with what I want. If you want to talk about a kit I vibe with, then that's a perfect segue to talk about Kamisato Ayaka, everyone's favorite friendless and socially awkward hero. Ayaka, in my opinion, is the best cryo DPS in the game right now. And that's because of two things. Her great synergy with many units in this game, and the fact that her damage is so reliant on a burst that lasts such a short amount of time. These two things feed into each other. With her damage profile being so short, she can abuse even the worst hydro applicators in the game like Barbara. With a high refined Amenoma Kageyuchi, ER barely becomes a problem. With the limited DPS windows in the game, she simply shines everywhere, even against bosses if you play her right, even if you don't freeze. Again, just don't be brain dead when using her burst. I have no qualms with her personality or her story quest. She's not as boring as Ganyu, her design isn't as good as Eula's. Barring her kit, everything about her is just about right. Of course, Saori Hayami's voice always invokes the images of snow falling on my nose as she speaks sweet, friendless nothings into my ear. And all in all, Ayaka is the only cryo 5-star I'd actually see myself pulling for. But I didn't, yet again. Ayaka, for me, is the victim of circumstance. I chose a C1 Kazuha over getting Ayaka the first time around. And to be honest, that decision is getting better by the day. Kazuha rerun when, anyone? And this time around, with her banner coming up, I found myself looking forward to a certain Sincho-haired gambler right around the corner. And Ayaka will yet again become a skip. Perhaps someday, when the stars align perfectly with the reruns and I could care less about what lies yonder, then I will finally have visions of snowy mountain peaks, seeing my breath waft through the air as I hear Saori Hayami's lucid tones reverberate like a sweet goosebump coursing through my veins. Speaking of goosebumps, that is the exact opposite of what I feel for the last 5-star cryo we're talking about today. Shenhe. Let me be brief with this one. Shenhe is a niche cryo support that essentially is a Bear Rosaria that actually buffs cryo. It should be easy to see why I never even considered pulling for her. However, there are more things than that. First, I think she is the most boring character in all of Genshin Impact. During the Archon quest that featured her, I couldn't help but just shake my head every time she spoke the same monotonous words over and over again. Despite having Saber's voice, she managed to quell the VA simpage from me and utterly made my desire to pull flaccid. Despite all the hype of her hit windows of all her simpable features, one look at her dead eyes sent me into a brief stint into erectile dysfunction. I'm sorry, I'm just mentally scarred at this point. Perhaps someday, when I finally pull for a cryo unit, will I consider this mentally unstable exorcist again. But for now, I am extremely happy to skip and will be for the foreseeable future.
This moment will be frozen in time.
And for that foreseeable future, the cryo DPS that I will be using and the one unit that has actually curbed and quelled my need for any freeze DPS is this gorgeous man right here. Yes, Kaya. The free 4-star you get at the start of the game. People underrate just how good this bare-chested man is. I recently 80 out of 90'd him, talents 11, skill 8 burst, and I have him at C3, and I wish I saved Starglitter to have him at C6 by now. Kaya is just a good unit. He can perfectly replace any of the 5-star cryo DPS and do at least 70%.
This moment will be frozen in time.
5% of the job they do. Not only that, but he is extremely fun to play due to his quick swap nature, and thus his freeze teams become an endless rotation of spamming bursts and skills as they are frozen in place, incapable of doing anything until it eventually meets its death. If you're like me, and most of the limited cryo characters just did not interest you at all, Kaya is a great option to fill in that void for a freeze team. Don't let his status as a free unit fool you. I've waited over 500 days of playing Genshin Impact before I built him, and I regret every moment of that. Don't be like me. Build your Kaya right the frick now. Because even if you get a limited cryo someday, Kaya will still be a compliment to that unit. Alright, do you agree or disagree with any of my thoughts with the cryo units in this game? I'm sure more than just a couple have intense feelings about this, so come at me over at twitch.tv/thejimaman, where I stream Genshin almost every day, or rage at me over at the Slime Kingdom Discord. This is our parting. Farewell.